Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Tom. Today, my wife Tina and I are going to share with you a bit about our December 2022 Rhodes Scholar trip to Costa Rica. There's really only one good way to get to Costa Rica. Technically, it's possible, but not really advisable to drive. Driving one would have to drive not only through several hundred miles of the US, but also Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, and Nicaragua. It's a lot easier, faster, and safer to fly. Besides that, the views from the plane are quite lovely. This is over the Florida Keys.
Our trip was through a company named Rhodes Scholar. They specialize in travel mostly for people over 50 years of age, but there are no requirements. And they have different planned activity levels for people. Here you can see all of Costa Rica, bordered to the north, Nicaragua, Panama on the south, the Pacific Ocean on the west, and the Caribbean on the east. The population is 5.2 million people. We flew into the capital city, San Jose, and stayed mostly in the central portion of the country, visiting Sarapiqui, Arenal, Monteverde. Our trip was named A Taste of Costa Rica and focused not only on great Costa Rican food, but on various landscapes and on visiting homes of Costa Rican people. That was really a joy.
I want to take a minute now to explain the phrase and concept of pura vida. This phrase, while literally translated as pure life, in Costa Rica can mean hello, how are you, goodbye, oh well, it's a beautiful day, or that's life, just about anything you want it to mean. And you will see it and hear it everywhere, beginning in the airport when you arrive. As soon as you feel comfortable with it, every time someone says it to you, just respond with the same pura vida. You will get nothing but smiles in return. I think the people of Costa Rica go to school to learn how to be friendly and hospitable, because darn near everyone is. Hospitality is the #1 industry of Costa Rican people. We'll tell you more about this amazing person later.
Back to San Jose. Despite being a Spanish colonial city, San Jose is quite modern. Many of the older buildings have been repurposed, like this one, which was once an airport in central San Jose, but now is the Museum of Costa Rican Art. This beautiful wooden carvings on the wall of this entire room was once a lobby of that facility, which was an airport. Art lines the walls of what used to be a concourse, and all the artwork present is by Costa Rican artists, and we love this tall hand-carved sculpture.
But like all major national capitals, San Jose has lots of traffic. It took roughly an hour in rush hour, and it seems to always be rush hour, to get from the airport to our hotel in the central city. Some buildings in the central city that were once government offices, like this one, are now schools. Some old homes are being repurposed as boutique hotels. Bright and modern artworks are quite common in the old colonial central city parks, as well as reminders of the past, like this bronze of Cortez.
The street that ran, by our hotel has been turned into a pedestrian thoroughfare that allows easy walking access to major sites such as museums in the city, as well as offering delightful pastries that we can purchase while strolling. This is the National Theater, which once operated and which still operates. It has a lovely cafe inside as well. And these are the original tile work and doors and marble statues. If nothing is going on, visitors are welcome to enter and enjoy the colonial beauty of this fine structure.
Street vendors are also common, here providing fresh fruits. At one breakfast in our hotel, the restaurant of which opened onto the pedestrian byway, a person we were seated with asked for a fruit that was not on the menu. The waiter promptly went out and purchased it and then served it up with her breakfast. That's the kind of hospitality you expect in Costa Rica. Speaking of breakfast, here's a desayuno típico, typical breakfast in Costa Rica. Gallo pinto, which is rice, beans, and peppers, eggs, fried plantains, fried cheese, and bread. We found it a wonderful way to start the day and much more filling than you would think. We planned our trip to arrive a day early before our tour started so we could have a day on our own to explore a bit of San Jose. Our first destination was to be the Jade Museum. It's next door to this lovely colonial building that houses the Museum of Costa Rican History. This tall building is the Jade Museum, 4 floors of amazing Costa Rican Mayan history, pottery and jade work. We were fascinated and spent the whole rest of the day here.
We have never seen natural jade before, but here is a huge piece in the lobby. Jade is found in abundance in Costa Rica and the rest of Central America, and it is a very easily worked stone. These stone spears are found all around Costa Rica in many sizes, but are characterized by their perfect roundness. They were symbolic of power and status by the Mayan groups that carved them at 500 to 1500 CE. The ones with the biggest spears had the greatest power and status. There were many examples of finely worked jade, as well as jade working tools, and a film explaining their use in the museum. This is a jade-tipped drill used for drilling holes in both jade and other softer stones while using water from their streams.
And all around the museum, there were cases and more cases of both jade and Mayan pottery. I don't know if any of you visited the Mayan exhibit here at Union Station in Kansas City. It was awesome, but it was minuscule compared to this museum. There were also many exhibits of Mayan culture and daily life. For now, just enjoy a few images of some of the amazing pottery on display. And when we think about Mayan culture, we usually think about the Yucatan in Mexico, but the Mayans stretched all the way down to the edge of South America. And their pottery we found absolutely gorgeous.
Shamans were important in the Mayan culture, not only as community leaders and counselors, but also healers. Statues of shamans were often anatomically correct, and women also held the role of shaman and healers. Here's some more statues of shamans. Any guess as to what these shamanistic tools might be? The use of hallucinogenic material, such as cocaine, were common. These nasal sniffers were used for snorting by the shamans, and then they would blow the smoke above their patient.
So everybody got happy.
There was also displays of Mayan death rituals, which included placing a stone matate in the lap there. It's a grinding stone with the burial. These are burial bundles, and they were found in one area. There were like 37 of these. And this gorgeous chieftain's hat made with quetzal feathers, that's a bird, of course, they found that in a burial.
Well, like Cheryl said, I'm a retired dentist, so when I saw this, it really caught my attention. It was meant as an example of dental mutilation as decorative. But I couldn't help but diagnosing everything else I saw, from the heavy wear on the teeth, how flat they are because of stone tools used to grind grain, to the age of the person at death, who was probably over 25 because his third molars have erupted, to abscesses and fractures. The next morning, when our whole tour group was together, we all went a few blocks down the pedestrian walkway to the Gold Museum. This museum contains thousands of examples of cast gold valued at nearly $1 billion. The museum is 3 stories deep, all underground, and quite heavily guarded. Even with the tour group, we had to show our ID in order to get in, and guards accompanied us the whole way through. There's some examples of some of the gold work, finely done. A lot of animals as effigies. Well, it's time to meet our tour guide. This is Gustavo. I have never met a guide more knowledgeable in so many areas as Gustavo, from climate and topography to history and culture to flora and fauna. He was well versed in all of it, and a great personality on top of that. Costa Rica offers university level training in tourism and hospitality. After the Gold Museum, we left San Jose and headed into the surrounding countryside to this home, where we were to enjoy a wonderful meal, served on a lovely covered patio out in the backyard.
Wendy, our hostess, had prepared foods and fruits grown in her own garden, besides the delicious fresh juices and wonderful pumpkin soups. That's what I remember most fondly. This is a typical Costa Rican home. It had a lovely modern kitchen where one of the hostess's daughters was busy. Our hostess and her daughters, along with their best friend, posed for pictures and bid us goodbye as we left for our next destination with smiles and full tummies.
Because bananas, pineapples, and other fruits are major crops in Costa Rica, Gustavo thought we should get to try a bit of everything. So for an afternoon snack, we stopped at a roadside fruit market. An amazing array of fruits are grown in Costa Rica, most of which I can't identify. We do recognize bananas, however, a staple of most meals. But don't ask us to name any of these or these. But whatever their names, when they're prepared and presented like this, they are so tasty.
Pineapples we would learn more about later. I had to check these out, but they really never have a smell. At the fruit stand, we got a first look at a new bird. It's not just a grackle, but it is a boat-tailed grackle. From the fruit stand, we drove over beautiful mountain passes through a nature preserve and into a tropical rainforest at Selva Verde Lodge. Our rooms were cool, comfortable, clean, and lovely. The view off the porch was definitely unlike what we have seen here in Kansas City, Missouri. We were surrounded by beautiful tropical blooms, jungle foliage, more flowers, and even more flowers. To say this is a beautiful place is a bit of an understatement.
The first thing we did after unpacking was to go for a bird hike, where we saw our first, unusual for us, Costa Rican bird, a gray-headed chachalaca. Say that 3 times fast. Costa Rica has hundreds of species of birds, and we were anticipating adding several to our lifetime birding list. And then we saw our first large lizard, not an iguana, just a really big lizard sunning on a tree stump. And then there was a pair of green parrots that flew overhead. The lodge is on the Sarapique River and has a beautiful hanging bridge which crosses the river. The bridge and a great sunset sunset highlighted our first evening in the rainforest of Costa Rica, followed by a great morning with a little fog over the bridge.
Nighttime brings out the frogs, and this one kindly posed for us. The dining hall at Selva Verde provided wonderful meals of locally sourced foods, which always included fresh fruits, fried plantains, and gallo pinto. That's a delicious bean dish. Just outside the big window behind Tom was a huge area of a bird feeding station. And the bird everyone is anxious to see in Costa Rica is a toucan. This is a yellow-throated toucan. And we certainly saw toucans and even more toucans.
Here are a few more birds of Costa Rica that we saw at Selva Verde. This is a clay-colored thrush. Many birds that we have here in Kansas City actually overwinter in Costa Rica. It is possible to do nothing but bird watching here, and trips are specially designed for that. We were fortunate that our teacher and guide was also a bird watcher. This beauty looks a little bit like the orchard and Baltimore orioles that we have here, but it's a black collared oriole. Even though we didn't see this bird's rump, it is a scarlet-rumped tanager. Here's another chakalaka chowing down with a clay-colored thrush. Plenty for everyone. And although it is quite sane, this is a squirrel cuckoo. We were lucky to see this one when we were out walking by ourselves. And a Montezuma oropendola. This lovely bird looks like a toucan, but it's a collared aracari. And another view of the collared aracari.
This is a great kiskadee. And this is a gorgeous emerald honey creeper. And again, that cute little emerald honey keeper.
I wish we had these in our backyard.
Yes. This is a blue-gray tanager. What a cutie. Sorry, I can't name this flower, but here it is in full bloom. It reminds me of a Q-tip. This weird-looking and huge bloom is actually a banana flower. The banana develops inside, it opens, and then the flower falls off. Another unusual bloom, well, they really are unusual to us, every one of them. This one catches water, and birds and insects drink from those little ledges. But no matter what it is, most things grow big in the rainforest.
Not all unusual things are flowers. They have termites in Costa Rica also, but the nests are on the sides of trees like this one because the ground is so moist. This is Donna, a fellow Rhodes Scholar from Missouri. She lives down near West Plains. And of course, we had to have a picture of us on the hanging bridge.
For our evening meal, we visit a small home of Hazel on the left with a huge outdoor kitchen where we received a lesson in cheese making. Here, Lida, one of our group members, is helping with the cheese. Hazel, our hostess, milks her own cows, which are tethered in the front yard. And she also grows white pepper plants for farm income. Along with farming, she heads a woman's cooperative that does art projects, and the proceeds of which go to fund children's program and a library. Several of us brought books in Spanish and school supplies for the kids. Next, we were taught how to make arepas, a Central American bread. I had to watch closely because Tom will probably want me to do this when we get home. Think again, Tom. Well, it looks pretty close to what Hazel was doing. Not really. And the finished arepas was tasty, served with homemade cheese and preserves.
Well, all this was going on, and I really wasn't watching cooking that much. This red-legged honey creeper was helping itself to some old fruit on a feeding stand just behind the kitchen. The traditional way to brew coffee in Costa Rica is this: grounds in a mesh bag with hot water dripping through. Simple, but very effective. Here was Hazel's milking stool stuck up in the rafters. And there are plenty of coconuts in the yard. In fact, one might want to wear a helmet. And it was laundry day next door. It was so enjoyable to share meals in the homes of just regular folks and to share somewhat in everyday life.
After dinner, we headed back to the lodge, where we could possibly go for a dip to cool off, although the weather was not hot for December. But the plan for the evening was to learn a bit of salsa dancing from two of the most expert dancers I've ever seen. Some of us were more energetic, practicing the steps, while the others were less energetic, and they documented the event.
That was my job.
The following morning, we had an opportunity to experience the Sarapiqui River in a different way. Several of the group had no experience in river rafting, so we started out with instructions and a few images beforehand.
The first thing after boarding the raft and entering the river, our guide promptly fell in to see if we'd learned our lessons. I'd paid attention and promptly saved the guide. At least I pulled him back into the raft after he reminded me it was my job to save him. Tina and I kayak in the wild rivers of the Ozarks every year, but we had only rafted once, and it was nothing like this river. We did learn, however, that those who are in the back, while having to paddle harder, get splashed a bit less, if that is possible. We were all a bit wet by the time we ended. The ride was about 45 minutes long, and we could have gone on for hours. It was great fun for a bunch of seniors, and we would do it again in a minute. I'm not certain everyone in the group felt the way we did, but I think mostly everyone enjoyed the adventure. Later on, we had a different river adventure in a more quiet stretch of the same Sarapique River.
And in a much safer and drier kind of boat, we went down the Sarapiqui looking for river wildlife, and we were not disappointed. We found a troop of howler monkeys hanging from the trees. They're about the size of chimps and seem to like to throw fruit at passerbys. This 2-foot-long iguana was lounging in a tree along the river. The orange spines meant that he was a male and he was looking for a mate. The claws themselves looked about 2 feet long. And a family of bats was hanging out on the side of the tree. This is an Amazon kingfisher, about twice the size of our belted kingfishers in Missouri, and he was looking for something to consume. While down below on the riverbank, this 10-foot-plus caiman was also looking for something to eat. I'm glad we didn't know about these when we were rafting earlier. This is a lovely anhinga, about the size of a great blue heron. It was sunning and drying its wings along the riverbank.
So much for river exploration. We then headed by bus to our next adventure, learning about pineapple production. I have never seen so many pineapples. This particular plantation was completely organic. After learning about the farm, we got to enjoy some extremely fresh pineapple. Incoming pineapple. After learning how to tell if a pineapple is fresh, we all finally got to taste. And then to enjoy really fresh pina coladas with or without alcohol. They are yummy. Better than anything you could ever get in Kansas City.
Our next stop was at the Arenal Paraíso Resort near Fortuna, Costa Rica, where each couple or single person had their individual casitas with a perfect view of Arenal volcano. Arenal, which ceased its most recent eruption less than 10 years ago, is usually shrouded in clouds, as we were now technically in the region of a cloud forest. And this was our view out of our front window of the casita. The room itself was very comfortable with a back porch facing the forest. The porch was a great place to brush your teeth or watch birds, like this great curassow now parading with its mate, or this wonderful, colorful rufous motmot. You can always tell a motmot by its unusual tail feathers, which they display while mating.
Also on the back porch, we encountered this very strange insect, the machaca. The machaca with a peanut-shaped head is also known as the love bug. When first discovered in the jungle, and I quote, the guide told of the machaca's fatal bite, for which an unsuspecting victim had less than a day to find a cure. And there was only one cure. To abate the perils of death that the machaca's lethal poison brought, the victim must make love within 12 hours. And so the legend of La Machaca was born. In reality, the insect does not bite and has no poison. But the cure, anytime is fine with that. Other than great views, bugs, and birds, this resort has a lovely dining area, volcanic hot springs that cascade down the hillside, and a zip line through the jungle, which we did not use, but others in our group did. Other birds on this resort property that we saw, this toucan joined us for breakfast one morning. Another scarlet-rumped tanager, and a rufous collared sparrow.
One morning, we were awakened by a very loud noise, very strange. At first, we thought it was the plumbing, so I went into the bathroom and put my ear down by the toilet. Well, no, that wasn't it. And we soon realized it was coming from outside on the back porch. Tom carefully stuck his head out, grabbed the camera to record this wake-up call of a huge amount of howler monkeys in the forest. Our next visit was to a cloud forest and a forest preserve known as Mistico Arenal Hanging Bridges. Costa Rica has done everything it can to preserve and restore its natural resources, and currently 28% of all land in Costa Rica is a national park or a preserve. Climate is changing there also. For example, at this time of year, we visited this area would normally be shrouded with clouds and a mist. One can easily see why this is called a hanging bridge. There were 16 of these bridges that stretched across the canopy, the jungle canopy. They have 350 species of birds, 100 species of mammals, 250 species of reptiles and amphibians, and over 700 different native plants. It's a very interesting place to hike. Plus it was, I don't know how many feet deep it was. It really,
A few hundred.
a few hundred feet. You look down. I just kept hanging on to the sides of the thing. Let's see, where am I with it?
54.
54. We did see a cotimundi here. They're really cute. They have really long claws. They pretend to be friendly, but they're really wild animals. Here is a Central American whiptail, a brown crested flycatcher, and this was a tiny pit viper, was curled up close to the edge of the trail, and they are venomous. And there was another great view of Arenal volcano from one of the bridges above the trees.
After hiking and having lunch and a rest at our hotel, we visited an agricultural cooperative and learned about many of the food-producing plants in the area. Many farms produce pepper. Yes, these little seeds are processed into the pepper we use on our tables. Our guide also shared with us many of the decorative plants of the forest. There are way too many to remember any of their names. Another product this farm produces is sugarcane juice. So Tina got a lesson on how the hard, woody sugarcane is turned into liquid. She said it was hard work, but in the end result, which was shared with all of us, it was so tasty, really pure sugar. After working, we made our own tortillas to be served with a delightful dinner from the farm kitchen, which was enjoyed with a program of traditional dance. The dances were beautiful and entertaining, but for me, they were mostly just a blur of color and attractive young women.
Vení, casate conmigo, yo te ofrezco en mi boda. Un pedacito, a ver si tengo el mayor.
This young woman was doing a dance designed for an unmarried woman to find a fiance. Seems like she was successful, and great fun was had by all.
The following morning, we took a launch across the largest lake in Costa Rica, Lake Arenal, and had this last view of Arenal volcano. Unfortunately, the launch engine had been filled with bad fuel and it stopped working in the middle of the lake. I said to our guide, "What are we going to do?" Very calmly, he said, "Just enjoy the moment." So true. Fortunately, we drifted to a small island where this great egret posed for us. And I kept a lookout on the bow. After a bit of mechanical work by our pilot and our guide, Gustavo, we arrived safely on the far side. We were headed to the town of Monteverde and had a stop planned at a coffee plantation, and we saw these cattle egrets as we passed through the mountains.
Our next stop along the road was a coffee plantation. For many years, coffee was the major export of Costa Rica. While coffee has been overtaken by bananas and pineapples, it is my firm belief that coffee grown on the mountainsides of Costa Rica, it may be the best in the world. This is a traditional coffee cart pulled by oxen used for coffee transport. Coffee is still picked by hand, and we got to do a bit of picking, but transport is now mechanized. The red fruit that surrounds the beans is actually quite sweet and tasty. At least one plantation used the husk to make wine. Others recycle it as animal feed or fertilizer. Chocolate pods, on the other hand, are really rather ugly and slimy. and quite bitter. Chocolate was first developed as an intoxicant and fermented by Mayan civilizations. Mayans seem to use lots of intoxicants. The Spanish discovered chocolate along with several foods that are now common, corn, for example, and took them back to Europe. In the bean drying room, our plantation guide demonstrated how chocolate was originally prepared by using a mano and metate. While this quiet boa constrictor watched from underneath the racks, these reptiles are kept in the room for very effective rodent control. A bit later on, Tina got to practice a bit more up-to-date method of processing chocolate.
It was a bit more difficult than I expected. But with a little cane juice added and poured over bananas, oh, it was so delicious. Back to the coffee side of the business, this hand-operated mill is used to separate the coffee beans from the husk before the beans are taken to a drying room. After drying, the beans are separated by size, shape, and quality before being bagged to take to the roaster.
My absolutely favorite coffee is from Doka Estates, where I order it every few months by mail to have what I think is the freshest and best tasting coffee in the world. After getting a good caffeine and chocolate fix, we moved on to Monteverde, which literally translates as Green Mountain. Our rooms were in the low buildings in the center of the image, with a wonderful open balcony overlooking Green Mountains. What else? From that balcony, we were also able to do a bit of bird watching while enjoying the view. This is another great kiskadee and another scarlet-rumped tanager.
Monteverde was founded by Quaker settlers from the U.S. in 1947. A group of Quaker men from the southern U.S., which was Alabama, who, as pacifists, had served in World War II as medics, then refused to sign up for the universal draft as conscientious objectors. They were jailed because of their anti-military stance. As soon as they were released, they gathered their families, and they were from Illinois and Alabama. There were 44 adults and 11 children. They actually drove to Costa Rica, a country which had abolished their military following a bloody revolution. This was not an easy task, driving to Costa Rica, as there were no roads at the time. Several places they cut their own way through the thick, dense forest. They found land in central Costa Rica after a bit of time, after some time. They purchased several thousand acres and developed a dairy operation, founded the town of Monteverde, and set aside 1/2 of their land as a preserve to protect the watershed. This was the first private preserve in the country. Flori, on the right here, is seen with her great-granddaughter. She married one of the original settlers, and he died in 2022. PBS did an excellent documentary called Sweet Home Monteverde about this community that is available online for free. It was fabulous. You could see them in the mud with their trucks and sleeping in tents and hacking away at the thick forest. So I recommend Sweet Home Monteverde to all. Flori is with her granddaughter. They gave us a presentation about the Quakers and the founding of Monteverde before we were served a wonderful meal in a separate meeting room. And monkeys, they would try to climb in at the top, and then they'd make havoc in the kitchen area. So they're trying to scratch their heads, trying to figure out how they can keep those monkeys out. Costa Rica still has no military. Instead, they choose to invest in universal education through college as well as universal health care. Imagine that. Everyone in our group fell in love with Flori. If there was ever a person who exuded peace and love, it was her. Prior to our lecture and meal, Flori's great-granddaughter came up with several bananas. She was outside, we were inside the meeting room, and it seemed she was being pursued by a group of white-faced monkeys. Some of the group followed her outdoors and after her with the monkeys, and I had a blast because I would hold these little tiny Costa Rican bananas real high in the air, and here they would come one by one very carefully and snatch that so fast from my hand. So people got some great photographs and videos. It was really fun.
One can see quite easily why they chose Monteverde as a name for the region. Back at the hotel the following morning, while Tina and I were taking an early bird walk, we were treated to a wonderful sighting. Notice the tail? Definitely a mott-mott. In this case, a lessons mott-mott. And he nicely posed for us for several minutes. We spent the rest of the morning hiking through a private preserve, Buricancha, where we were advised not to feed the wildlife, no matter how much they might beg. Our guide pointed out to us this seed pod. The seeds inside look like oxen eyes, and that is the name given the plant. It is said that carrying the seeds in your pocket will prevent digestive problems. I'm not certain that works. We did see a resplendent quetzal, the national bird of Costa Rica, in this preserve, but only through a bird spotting scope, too far for a good image. But we did see this crested guan high up in the trees. And we finally got an image of a hummingbird. They're everywhere. This one was perched way up high and stayed still just long enough to get a picture. This is a green violet-eared hummingbird.
Some trees grow in very unusual shapes in the cloud forest. And some trees like this ficus are actually walking trees. They grow new roots and actually move to follow openings in the canopy where sun will shine through. Also in Monteverde is a large butterfly sanctuary where we took a tour. Here's a moth. And this other moth is so beautiful. It was translucent, those little gray areas on the moth. We also went to a bat sanctuary where the director gave us an interesting talk about bats. And sometimes you could see the little, after his talk, you could see the little baby bat, so cute, laying on mommy's chest. It was really a treat. These are very interesting creatures. Bats are mammals. They are not rodents. They are not flying mice. Does anyone know the closest animal relative to a bat? Us, humans.
After going batty for a while, we had a wonderful lunch and time to explore the small town of Monteverde. It's easy to tell this was the men's room. And even if you didn't know Spanish, this must be the women's. We returned to our hotel in time for a wonderful sunset over the green mountains. The water in the lower part of the image here is actually the Pacific Ocean. We hadn't realized we were that close. A few of us got up early the next morning to go on a bird watching walk again. We went down to a pond beneath our room, but saw nothing new. It was a lovely way to start our last day in the mountains, though. We took time for one last look at Monteverde and did get a peek at a brown-crested flycatcher who came by to say, "Pura vida."
On our drive back to San Jose for our last evening in Costa Rica, our teacher, friend, and guide, thought we might like to get a close look at the Pacific Ocean on the west side of the country. This was an 8-day trip in 2022, and it was a small group, which is really nice. They have these trips that are small, like just 12 people, which makes it really easy. And we all had so much fun together. We had one last treat, though, that was unexpected. We stopped at a truck stop for lunch. They were always immaculately clean, huge, served an array of marvelous foods. And while eating, Tom saw something fly by, and we quietly got up and went into the parking lot where two scarlet macaws were sitting enjoying lunch. He's got almond in his little beak there, and it was a huge almond tree. We had a few minutes to enjoy these beautiful creatures before the crowd saw us looking up, snapping shots, and they all ran out. Here's another lovely picture of that macaw. They're so colorful.
Back in San Jose, we had our final get-together at a hotel near the airport. After breakfast, we had opportunity to relax by the pool.
And even take a little wade before catching our transfer to the airport and saying goodbye to Costa Rica.
And so we say goodbye, but we can never forget. Pura vida.
Well, that was very interesting. I just love looking at all the animals and plants that you got to see there. Oh, I love the birds too. They're so beautiful. Do we have time for some questions? Yeah, here we come in the chat. Wonderful program. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of weird with Zoom because usually we get to interact with people as we're going along and answer questions as they come up. But if you have any questions, we really are happy to talk about Costa Rica. We love it. I would move there if it were practical, but it really isn't practical.
I've heard that it is a common place for expats though to retire to. It's because the healthcare is so good, right?
Yes.
And friendly people. They really are very friendly. It was so nice.
Are there many English speakers? I mean, do many people speak?
Yes.
Almost everybody knows some English. And of course, I know a little Spanish, so it was nice to be able to converse. It's somewhat in the native language.
Okay.
And they go to college to learn hospitality. And in the beginning, when we took this class, they would give us classes that first night about Costa Rican history and all sorts of information. These people are very educated, trying to educate us about their country. So that it was really wonderful.
Good. Yeah. It really looked like an interesting trip. I envy, I envy you.
Well, anybody can do it.
Yeah.
It's really not very expensive.
You know what? I've heard that too about Costa Rica. Yeah.
Yeah, the Rhodes Scholar is very reasonable. And then the small groups are wonderful because who wants to go with 50 people? We just went with 12. That's delightful.
That is, yeah. Yeah. Okay, if we have any more questions. Oh, just a comment how much they appreciated the program. Yeah, it is a little different on Zoom than it is in person. So, but we had a nice turnout tonight. I'm glad everybody could join us. And
yeah, we thank you all for showing up. That's really nice.
Yeah, we had a pretty good turnout tonight. Okay, well, I think I'm going to go ahead and call it a night, and I want to thank you so much for sharing with us your trip, and we'll look forward to future trips, I'm sure.
Pura vida.
Pura vida.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.